Her hands trembled as she watched a complete stranger kneel in front of her, son in the middle of the crowded park. For 8 months, no one had been able to reach him. Not the child psychologist, not the therapist, not even her. But this man, this single father she'd never met, had just done something impossible. He'd gotten her son to look up, to make eye contact, and now he was whispering something that made her little boy's eyes fill with tears. What could he possibly be saying? If this story moves you, please subscribe to True Kindness Tales and be part of our community. Hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments. We love hearing from you. Now let me tell you how a chance encounter in a Boston park changed 2 families forever. Rebecca Chen had conquered Silicon Valley before she turned 35. As the CEO of a healthcare technology company valued at over $2 billion, she was used to commanding boardrooms, closing deals that made headlines, and being interviewed by Forbes and Fortune. Her calendar was managed down to 5-minute increments. Her decisions affected thousands of employees, and her company's software was saving lives in hospitals across the country. But none of her success, none of her intelligence, none of her resources could solve the one problem that mattered most. Her 6-year-old son hadn't spoken a single word since the day they lost everything. It happened on a Tuesday morning in January. Rebecca's wife, Lauren, had been driving to her art studio when a truck ran a red light. The impact killed her instantly. In one moment, Rebecca became a widow and single parent, and her son Jamie lost the mother who'd been his whole world. Lauren was the one who sang to him, who painted murals on his bedroom walls, who made up elaborate bedtime stories about brave knights and friendly dragons. Rebecca had always been the provider, the problem solver, the one who worked late while Lauren handled the magic of childhood. And when Lauren died, Jamie's voice died with her. The doctors called it traumatic mutism. They said children sometimes retreat into silence after experiencing devastating loss. They gave Rebecca pamphlets and referrals and gentle reassurances that with time and professional help, Jamie would likely speak again. But 8 months had passed, and her son remained locked in a silence so complete, it terrified her. He would nod or shake his head, would follow instructions, would even smile sometimes at cartoons on television, but he wouldn't speak. Not a word, not a sound, not even a cry. Rebecca had tried everything her money and connections could buy. The best child trauma specialist in Boston, a renowned psychiatrist from Yale who consulted remotely twice a week, play therapy with hand puppets and art supplies, music therapy with gentle songs. Lauren used to sing. She'd rearranged her entire life, stepping back from her CEO duties to work from home, turning down speaking engagements, missing board meetings. Nothing worked. Jamie remained unreachable, existing in his own silent world, and Rebecca felt herself drowning in helplessness and guilt. On a crisp Saturday afternoon in September, Rebecca's sister practically forced her out of the house. "You both need fresh air and normalcy," Maya had insisted, packing a bag with snacks and Jamie's favorite toy cars. "Go to the park. Sit in the sunshine. Just be somewhere that isn't filled with grief." So Rebecca drove to Franklin Park, parked near the playground, and walked with Jamie to a bench, overlooking the open green space where families gathered on weekends. The park was alive with noise and movement. Children shrieked with laughter on the swings. Dogs bounded after frisbees. Couples spread blankets for picnics. It was aggressively normal, almost painfully so, and Rebecca felt like an intruder in this world of simple happiness. Jamie sat beside her, small and still, watching everything with those serious dark eyes that used to sparkle with mischief. She'd brought his favorite snacks, hoping to coax some response, some engagement. He took a juice box when she offered it but didn't drink, just held it in his lap like a prop. That's when she noticed them. A man and his daughter playing catch with a football about 20 yards away. The little girl, maybe 7 or 8, had dark curls pulled into a ponytail and wore a Patriots jersey that was clearly too big for her. She was laughing as she threw the ball, but something about her movements seemed different, careful, deliberate, like she was concentrating intensely on something that should be automatic. The man was patient, catching her throws no matter how wild, cheering for her successes, never showing frustration when the ball went sideways or dropped short. The girl threw the ball again, and this time it sailed past her father and rolled directly to Jamie's feet. The girl came running over slightly breathless and stopped a few feet away. "Sorry about that," she said, her words coming slowly, almost carefully formed. My aim is still pretty bad. She looked at Jamie with an open, friendly expression. Want to throw it back? Jamie looked at the football, then at the girl, then down at his hands. He didn't move. Rebecca felt her throat tighten. She was about to apologize, to explain, when the girl simply smiled and said, That's okay. Sometimes I don't feel like playing either. She picked up the ball herself and turned to go, but then paused. I'm Zoe, by the way. If you change your mind about playing, we'll be right over there. The man had walked over by then, and Rebecca could see him taking in the situation with quick, understanding eyes. He was maybe 40, with kind features, and the slightly rumpled look of someone who prioritized comfort over style. He gave Rebecca a small nod, acknowledging the unspoken tension, and started to lead his daughter back to their spot. But Zoe wasn't quite finished. Dad, she said, tugging his sleeve. That boy looks sad, like I used to be. The man knelt down to his daughter's level. Having a quiet conversation Rebecca couldn't hear. Then Zoe nodded and ran back to their playing area. The man hesitated, clearly debating whether to approach, and Rebecca found herself hoping he wouldn't. She couldn't handle another well-meaning stranger offering advice or pity, but he didn't come over. Instead, he did something unexpected. He simply waved at Jamie, a casual, friendly gesture, and then went back to playing catch with his daughter. Over the next 20 minutes, Rebecca watched them play. She noticed how intentional the man was with his daughter, how he celebrated every catch, how he created elaborate, silly dances when he missed the ball, clearly trying to make her laugh. Zoe's movements were becoming more fluid, more confident. And Jamie, for the first time in months, was watching something with actual interest. His eyes tracked the football, followed their movements, and once, just once, his lips almost curved into a smile, when the man pretended to be knocked over by his daughter's throw. Then Zoe's ball sailed wild again, and this time it landed directly in Jamie's lap. Before Rebecca could react, the man called out, Hey, buddy, think you could help us out? We need someone with a good arm. It was casual, pressure-free, just an invitation. Jamie looked down at the football in his lap. His small hands touched the leather. And then slowly, he stood up. Rebecca's heart nearly stopped. Jamie walked toward the man and Zoe carrying the football. The man knelt down, bringing himself to Jamie's eye level, and said something quiet that Rebecca couldn't hear. Jamie stood there, frozen, clutching the ball. The man didn't push. He just stayed there, kneeling, patient. And then he did something that made Rebecca catch her breath. He placed his hand over his heart and said, in a voice just loud enough to carry, My name is David. This is my daughter Zoe. We lost someone really important to us, too. Zoe's mom died 2 years ago. Jamie's eyes went wide. David continued, his voice gentle but steady. For a whole year after her mom died, Zoe couldn't throw or catch anything. She has something called dyspraxia, which makes coordination really hard, but losing her mom made it even harder. Everything felt impossible. He glanced at his daughter, who had walked over to stand beside him. Want to know what helped? When we stopped trying to be who we were before and started figuring out who we could become. Zoe looked at Jamie with complete understanding in her young eyes. I still can't do lots of things other kids can do, she said, her words slow but clear. But I can do some things, and every new thing feels like winning. Jamie stood there, the football still in his hands, and tears began streaming down his face, silent tears that broke something open in Rebecca's chest. David didn't try to stop them or offer empty comfort. He just stayed there, kneeling in the grass, present and steady. And then he said something that changed everything. You don't have to talk. You don't have to play. You don't have to be anything except exactly who you are right now. But if you want to throw that ball, even just once, we'd be honored to catch it. The word honored hung in the air like a gift. Jamie looked at the ball in his hands, then at Zoe, then at David. And then, with tears still streaming down his face, he threw it. Not far, not perfectly, but he threw it. Zoe caught it against her chest, with both arms and cheered, like he'd thrown a touchdown pass. David stood up and held out his hand for a high five. Jamie looked at the hand for a long moment and then, hesitantly, he gave the smallest high five Rebecca had ever seen. She was crying now, her hand over her mouth, trying to stay quiet, trying not to break whatever spell was happening. David glanced over at her, and the look he held such deep understanding that she knew immediately he'd been exactly where she was, drowning in grief, desperate to save his child, terrified that the person they loved most would never be whole again. For the next hour, Jamie played with Zoe and David. He didn't speak, but he threw the ball. He ran when they created a silly game of keep away. He even laughed once, a sound so unexpected and precious that Rebecca actually gasped. When the sun began setting and David said they needed to head home, Zoe gave Jamie a hug that he didn't pull away from. David walked over to Rebecca, who had composed herself enough to stand. "I'm sorry if I overstepped," he said quietly, "but I recognize something in your son, that specific kind of silence." Rebecca shook her head, unable to find words adequate to her gratitude. Finally, she managed, "Thank you. I don't know how you knew what to say, but thank you." David smiled sadly. "I didn't know. I just remembered what it felt like to watch your child disappear into grief and to feel completely powerless. Someone told me once that healing isn't about getting back who they were. It's about helping them discover who they can become. Your son doesn't need to be the child he was before. He just needs to know he's allowed to be whoever he is now." They exchanged numbers before parting. Over the following weeks, Rebecca and David began meeting at the park regularly, their children developing a friendship built on understanding rather than words. Jamie gradually began making sounds. First humming, then single words. Then, 3 months after that first meeting, he said his first complete sentence. It was simple, just 5 words whispered to Zoe as they sat drawing with chalk on the playground pavement. "I miss my mom too." Rebecca learned that David had been a high school English teacher before his wife died, but he'd switched to freelance editing so he could be more present for Zoe. He understood that grief wasn't something to fix but something to walk through. He never pushed Jamie to talk, never treated his silence as a problem to solve. He just showed up week after week, creating a space where Jamie could exist without expectation, where healing could happen at its own pace, where 2 children who'd lost mothers could help each other find their way forward. The truth is, we often think kindness means having the right answers or knowing how to fix what's broken. But sometimes the deepest kindness is simply bearing witness to someone's pain without trying to rush them past it. David didn't cure Jamie's trauma or restore what they'd lost. He did something more profound. He showed a grieving child that silence was valid, that healing doesn't follow a timeline, that it was possible to be broken and still become something new. He taught Rebecca that the love she'd been showing her son through expensive therapists and desperate intervention was important. But sometimes what a wounded soul needs most is just someone who says, "I see you, I've been there, and you're not alone." That simple act of recognition, of shared understanding, created a bridge from isolation to connection. It reminds us that we don't need to have all the answers to help someone. We just need to show up with an open heart and the willingness to sit in someone else's darkness until they're ready to find their own light. Have you ever experienced a moment when someone's simple understanding changed everything? Share your story in the comments. Your words might be the hope someone else needs today.